This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road, Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I'd like to welcome Nolan Del Campo to the show this morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. So you were telling me about this new book. Do you know who wrote it?
Yeah, it's new to me. It's a few years old, but it's just really a synopsis of the various Zodiac attributed murders and whatnot, and goes to each one, just not much detail, and doesn't come to any new conclusions. But it's a good little review. It's a good to refresh your memory on dates and times and people and names.
You said it's still mentioning Arthur Lee Allen. What
it
were
said
they
that he was a prime suspect, but then it says he was exonerated after he died, blah, blah, blah. So
why after he died?
Yeah.
Did they believe the letter in his hand?
Yeah.
That says I'm not the Zodiac?
Yeah. And it doesn't mention Jack, for one. And,
right.
And it also mentions Deborah Perez, but says she was, that was false. She was crying wolf or whatever. And it has a lot about the Kathleen Johns stuff that we talked about a week or two ago. Right.
Well, it's always interesting to note that there's somebody on my side when it comes to that whole Deborah Perez thing, and I get it. We're just so used to seeing them throw out these false suspects, and I'm just shocked by the way they're received by the media and by the SFPD when they were handed Jack and didn't even so much as flinch or, look at that evidence, or I guess as Dennis would say, they just round filed it. So what was the purpose? Why do we choose one false suspect to, ingratiate with investigative time and then another where there's active evidence that supports this person has the background, the capabilities, the persona, the handwriting match. Yeah, all of it.
It's funny that you mentioned that because there's a picture of Deborah Perez at her press conference, and all these guys in suits around her looking so serious and like, oh yeah, we cracked the Zodiac, and and it's just a joke, and that was her news guy. It was covered by all the big stations in the Bay Area and by all the papers.
Yes, it was.
It made a lot of news, but it wasn't right. It wasn't correct. It wasn't accurate.
Gotta wonder why.
Yeah.
All right, so I had Ezra Cubis on YouTube comment, why was it that the cops did not want Black Dahlia to be solved? Which I used to think the same thing. When I went into this, I thought this was, let's blame the cops for the bad job and let's blame the cops for not doing what they should have done. And I mean, I obviously still sit here today and say SFPD didn't actively investigate Jack Terrence like they should have. Yep. But it's not so much, I think, that they didn't want it solved. I think that their capability to solve it, and that may be due to, my response here is, as I said, I don't believe the cops didn't want it solved. I believe there could have been an operative in the group steering people in the wrong direction to assist in the success of something larger than a serial killer. Most cops were not trained or prepared for this behavior. And honestly speaking, back then, mob killings were all they were really familiar with. And one should ask why so many of those weren't solved and maybe cross-connect the abilities for people to kill with immunity, like the mob. How many people?
I think they may have, or some of the higher-ups in the department that were keeping things suppressed, did know who some of the people involved. For instance, I think Hodel was involved. Now, was he the killer? I don't know, but I think he was involved. And Hodel at the time was running an abortion clinic, and many of the higher ranking cops would have their mistresses go to Hodel to get their abortions.
Yeah, everything was so dirty back then, including the cops.
Yeah, it was super dirty. The LA cops have been dirty forever. But,
right.
Back then, you ever see, what was it, LA Confidential and movies like that, Zoot Suit, involving the murders of Mexican kids back in the day. This is all 40s and 50s stuff.
Well, and it's just crazy what they glorify in the media, whether it's by movies or documentaries or, allowing some of these people who have turned over state's evidence to have immunity so they can climb on TV later and say how they killed people and proof I'm still here living and free. And
no, I think Maxwell is hoping, if she just keeps her mouth shut, that at the end of Trump's turn, he's going to pardon her or have her sentence commuted or something. That's what she's hoping for.
Do you think? I mean, I would be absolutely flabbergasted if that's something that he does. Absolutely flabbergasted.
Well, she would have to do a vow of silence. He's not going to do it for free.
Yep, there's always something in exchange, and it is all about who you know, right? But how could he exonerate her when she was the one providing all the girls? It just a pardon, I think, would just floor America.
She was his right-hand woman. Epstein's right-hand woman. So if Trump did any weird shit, she would know about it.
Yeah, again, why haven't we seen
any of these people, like the Royals in Britain and some of these other rich people, Clinton, who knows what actually went down, but the one person that may is Maxwell.
It just blows my mind. We still haven't seen not even so much as one arrest.
Right.
I don't even understand why opening the files if you guys aren't going to do anything about it.
And I don't think Epstein committed suicide.
No.
Either they faked his death and he's in a different country with plastic surgery, or the cops killed him, or someone on the inside killed him.
Right.
Politically motivated. I don't think he committed suicide.
Yeah, I don't think his father believes that either. And based on that pathologist, they believe that he was, that he was suicided, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
Oh, the whole thing. It just rots your mind to think about what people can get away with and do. And like you said, well, what if they did just fake his death? I wondered about that too. Like, what if they just faked it and, now he's off somewhere else doing whatever, or I don't know.
Yeah. But the suiciding, that's how a lot of the people that are either witnesses or participants or have theories on how to solve the Kennedy assassination were suicided.
Right.
For instance, George de Mohrenschildt, he was an oil engineer, had ties to Haiti, Dominican Republic. He was Lee Harvey Oswald's CIA contact in Dallas. And he spoke Russian, and his wife spoke Russian, so they befriended Marina. Well, after the assassination, after everyone's dead, Ruby's dead, in '67, he's this author Epstein, no relation, I think, is doing his second book on the JFK assassination, and he goes to interview de Mohrenschildt, I think it's in Florida at this point, and they talk for a couple hours. And he says, I need to come back tomorrow. I need to get more info. You got a lot of good info. Well, he got killed later that night, and they said he shot himself with a shotgun, but he was murdered. But they called it suicide. They called it suicide. A lot of the killings in, people affiliated were suicides. Like, several. Women, men, a little bit.
I want to say when I think that Dennis was set to meet with Kathleen Johns, I believe it was, in Sonoma County, and the FBI put him up in a hotel somewhere in the area because they were going to be meeting with her the next day, and she suddenly had a heart attack that night.
Did she die?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
God, it's fucking crazy.
Was it Kathleen Johnson? I'll need to go back and look, but I thought she was supposed to be taking pictures of Jack to her to get her to make identification to see if she could tell if that was who was driving her around. But I have to go back, but I'm pretty sure it was her.
Yeah, well, her family lived in Petaluma.
Yeah, I feel like he was in contact with the sister and so forth, and they were wanting to meet up with her and show her a picture, and yep, he got a call from Chris Hopkins the next morning saying she passed away. She had a heart attack and died.
Well, she'd already identified that
composite
as the person who abducted her, right?
Right.
When she went in to report the crime to the police.
Correct. But now showing her a live picture because we have a suspect to look at.
Oh, yeah. That would be amazing.
That would have been an easy close for this case. So one has to ask what really happened. Did the stress get to her? You know what I'm saying? Like, I really don't know. Back to this whole Tom Voigt thing.
That's crazy timing. That's too much of a coincidence.
Well, and it's as crazy as the coincidence of these new letters we're going to talk about as well here. So Dennis turns Jack in 2000. In 2002, the DNA has been ran, and Dennis finds out that Jack wasn't included, even though he had provided the DNA and envelopes with Jack's DNA on it to the SFPD. And Dennis goes back to Jack and says, nobody believes me. Everybody's round filing your stuff. They're not taking me seriously. I can't get anybody to pay attention. They don't think I'm telling the truth. Jack then gives Dennis the rights to his belongings in the shed in Arizona, which of course the PA system, the Eaton bond paper, different pieces of evidence that were brought to light at that point comes about. And then we see this letter in November of 2002 to Tom Voigt trying to get notice. Basically,
one point I want to make when it comes to Zodiac, fingerprint evidence and DNA evidence may not tell the whole story. Who knows who licked the envelopes? And we know that Jack said, I have ways of disguising my fingertips, airplane glue or whatever. So he's not going to leave a good print. He's too smart to anyway.
I would think so. But even then, at some point in time, you have to wonder whether or not, well, they did get a palm print, I believe, right? Who had the palm print?
Well, it's a palm print. They didn't say whose it was, but it's a palm print. Yeah. Paul starting on the cap.
Yeah. True that. Yes. But Sonoma County was in possession of a palm print of Jack. So I don't even know if any of this evidence exists anymore, and you can't get people to talk to you about it because if you go to the police, they say it's an open case. We can't discuss it with you. Well, then why is everything being discussed with Tom Voigt?
Right. And Sonoma, Solano, and San Francisco counties were different jurisdictions, and they were all jealous of each other. They didn't want the other county to be the one that solved Zodiac.
I just feel like it was more than that. That goes back to that suppression of evidence and cover up and everything else that we see that's happening, and then the putting forth of all these false suspects. But so this is a letter that comes out to Tom Voigt. So again, we have the timing, right? 2000 to 2002. We see the road that is being traveled by Dennis and Jack's willingness to participate and assist in the information for Dennis. And Dennis is complaining he's having problems with Tom Voigt. And then all of a sudden, right? So this happens to be the time Dennis is having problems with Tom Voigt, and they start to have a falling out. And these letters show up to Tom Voigt. I can't get over that as a coincidence, right? Like, just a mere coincidence. Yeah, just a mere coincidence. And like we were talking last week, I have included a lot of these characteristics into the handwriting examination. Tom Voigt says this letter was not from the Zodiac. This is, in his words, I guess, a hoax, if you will. I'm showing this letter to Dennis, and I purposely tried to do it out of the presence of Charles. So he went off to get something to drink at the front end of my house. I'm back in the office with Dennis. I'm showing him these letters, asking him what he thinks about them. He doesn't recognize this handwriting. It's Charles who walks in and says, "Where'd you get my dad's handwriting?" And I'm like, what? Like, that's a very, and so it wasn't as if he knew why I was even addressing these letters with Dennis. I wasn't claiming that Jack wrote them at this point. They were brand new. I just found them. So
it
it was
them to be his dad's writing.
that. And
Right
so
off the bat,
I'm going to roll with this message that, so this, let's see if I can find the package real quick. So here is the package that came with the envelope, and we have fingerprints that are sent in and evidently DNA. So this stuff is all accompanying the letter that I'm about to read. And so it says, "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking. This is the way I used to address myself to the editor of the San Francisco Chronicle. No longer is this necessary, for I am not that person anymore. I have changed. Still, the interest as to the events, there's that fussiness that we see. As to the events I perpetrated on an unsuspecting public are alive and well after 30 years. Sorry. Some say I must be dead. Others have a multitude of theories as to my demise. Again, as to my demise. He's that fussy references that we see the Zodiac making. The truth is, I'm very much alive, and I am enclosing evidence in this correspondence to match DNA and prints on file and in Quantico. For this individual to, so this is where I say when the Zodiac talks about being smarter than the CIA and smarter than the police and smarter than pretty much everybody else, he knows exactly where they need to send this evidence to, and I find that interesting.
Well,
says I am
knows where the FBI main lab is.
Right. But the FBI discontinued any investigation into the Zodiac in 1991. Wow. So why would, if anything was sent there, then it's usually probably forwarded right back to San Francisco. So it says, I am writing now to share a missing link in the Zodiac Killer's profile, one that all the compounded theories has not yet touched upon, and a probability that my conscience compels me to know. This is not to diminish the horrible acts I perpetrated. It can't. But to supply the truth, to set me free from a delusion that I may have only been hallucinating. I was the Zodiac. Hallucinating. So I think that comes along with the whole MK Ultra, mind control, hypnosis, these types of things. So he's saying the right things at this point. It says, in those years, I was on LSD and heroin addict with a taste for the bizarre, subcultural and underground lifestyles. I would have brownouts of consciousness that could literally last for days. In that state, I experienced the graphic deeds of the Zodiac Killer as if I was an observer, not the perpetrator. Wow. When I regained my senses and the high was over, a momentary state between trips and fixes, I would... Oh, some of this is hard to read. I would something my recollections with those around me. I would share my recollections with those around me who were pretty much in the same state as I. They as well as I would be blown away to then see in the news the very events I had described hours earlier. My peers and so this is almost as if he's bragatory about it. He's talking to people about it, like literally.
None of those people came forward because they were so high, I guess. My peers and I thought I was psychic. They used to call me priest, being heavy substance abusers and not caring to divulge any information to what we all believed was a corrupt and perverted system. I remained in my own eyes and those of my peers to be clairvoyant. Wow. Very
interesting. So we have that statement about LSD.
He had special powers. He's saying among his peers.
Right. It's almost he's like clairvoyant, right? The psychic who's predicting what may possibly have happened, and then boom, it's in the news. So clearly, it's to the degree that somebody heard him talk about these acts, and before it was public knowledge.
But they did not go take the next logical step, which would be to say, maybe he did it.
Well, but if they're all on drugs, who's going to the cops?
Yeah, they're not. They don't want to go to the cops.
But we do have LSD, obviously, as one of the drugs that was
Mind
used in
control
the
drug,
MK Ultra. Yeah, yeah. That fussy construction we were talking about, and this is missing page 2. So now we're back in the position with the Scorpion letters, which I just saw something not too long ago in regards to Scorpion, and I think it's on one of these crime shows that I've been watching. That
Well,
now
in Dirty Harry, the movie, which is filmed on location in San Francisco, the killer is named Scorpio because it's basically loosely based on the Zodiac case.
Right. Well, this was a Scorpion. I think this was actually a set of crimes that somebody calling themselves Scorpion had elicited. So and of course I was listening to it in the background. I didn't really pick up on it. I'll have to go back and find it because we know that in the John Walsh letters, the author is taking credit for something like 23 crimes. So it'd be interesting to see if I could match that up with what I was listening to on those shows. But my point behind this is that here we have people putting forth letters, but not the entire content of the letters. So where's page 2? Just like with John Walsh's letters, he only shows part of the letters, and then we get redactions, and we're not allowed to see certain things. But then again, this brings us back to this evidence here. Who is going to be taken seriously by writing a letter, providing fingerprints and DNA if it could not be determined that person was in fact who they were saying they were?
What's that stuff on the left? It looks like Chinese writing or something.
It's a package. It's a package that I believe there was a substance. Okay, so it says at the top of Tom Voigt's page, note the stamp depicting a taxi cab. Zodiac's last definite victim was killed in a cab. Also contained in the envelope were fingerprints and DNA samples wrapped in packets that originally contained a toxic substance. So is that another tie-in to the anthrax?
Who knows?
Well, I am just saying, we know the Zodiac to cross-connect his communications with something from one communication that he adds to the next one, kind of like the possibility of having left clues from previous crimes at the crime scene. So
that's his MO.
100% his MO. And absolutely, this, we've already talked about this, but this comes out of Singapore, which is Singapore. So we have the Thailand and Malaysia connections between where the escape route for John Mark Carr was. So he's making it appear, or at least attempting to make it appear, as though he's no longer in the country and you'll never be able to catch me. So here, that's interesting. I have fly-ins. Did you see that? I must have been doing some type of graphics with this back when, because I didn't even know that was there. But we do see the use of the zip code is similar. Not many people know about the 4 at the end, right? Unless it's pre-printed by a machine. Typically speaking, I don't even know what my 4 are here for Citrus Heights. I know what my first 5 are, but I don't know what my last 4 are.
I don't use the last 4 personally.
Nobody does. That's what I'm saying. So the fact that we have another letter that purports to be from the same person doing another habit that we know that they've done in the past is kind of, again, cross-connecting that.
But I think the stamp is a definite clue. The taxi cab and the stamp. Yeah.
It's no different than the historical trolley stamp in the D.B. Cooper case in communications.
Yeah. Stamps were a big thing to Zodiac.
Yeah, and that historical trolley stamp was out of San Francisco, and then they're going to try and pin the crime on somebody who lives in Oregon. Well, what are they doing going to San Francisco to get a trolley stamp? I mean, unless that was available to, mass America.
The weird thing about the Cooper case is there were several strong suspects. Several people who could have pulled it off.
And those that they continued to beat up for most of their lives, that they were never able to establish any type of connection or convict anybody with it. It's the same scenario as the Zodiac and the Black Dahlia and the
But I believe you, and I think Terry Batcher too, believe Jack did the D.B. Cooper or was involved anyway.
Right.
Well,
again, that coincidence of him taking flying lessons during that time frame, him being aware of and knowing Arthur Lee Allen, who in fact owned a plane, I guess.
Right.
There's they keep trying to pin him into or pigeonhole him into the Sherry Joe Bates stuff because he had a plane and could fly to Riverside and be there.
Familiarity with the plane that was actually hijacked, which I think was a 707, and the fact that you could lower the back door and actually get out without disrupting, the oxygen and air and whatever for the rest of the passengers. I mean,
well, I think it did. I think it did, but he instructed them to fly, I think, at a certain level in order that
the pressure,
right, and it did actually notify the cabin and the captain that the door had been opened because there was some of these things that you're talking about, that occurred. So that's the time frame, at least, when I guess the black box, if you will, recognizes these inconsistencies in the airplane's pressure and the things that are going on, and where they were at the time that occurred, which would suggest that he jumped out at a place other than what they have tried to establish or have us believe. So
it's so odd that they found a bunch of the money in one place, but most likely he didn't jump at the place where they found that money.
Exactly.
But they washed downstream. Who knows? But they had made some of the money.
Well, they made a comment that they had been dredging that river, so that wouldn't have been there or settled where it was unless it had recently been placed there. So it wasn't something that had been sitting there for 40 years, because if they had dredged, that would have come up. So some of the consistencies with this particular letter as it pertains to the Zodiac, number one, the letters to Tom Voigt, which we know Dennis is having an issue with. Why are the additional pages missing? Why can't we see those? We see double letter spelling errors, which is in the word corrupt. It's addressed to the editor. We talked about the "for I am not that person," the fussy, rather, as to, and I shall. Speaks about interest in the Zodiac story. It's perpetrated on an unsuspecting public. I really pay attention to that word, because perpetrated on an unsuspecting public. That's exactly what I think of when I think of the government programs, whether it be through the media and commercials and desensitization through movies about what they're really up to and doing, and the things they want us to see, but just little bits and pieces at a time so that it's not too crazy when it actually comes about. It kind of reminds me of The Simpsons and the whole pandemic, right? Simpsons portrayed getting a box from China and then everybody coming down with a sickness. And so they want to act like Simpsons is not Nostradamus. No, they're sensationalizing acts that they are already aware of that are going to occur, and they're telling us about it ahead of time. So now, in fact, don't they look clairvoyant, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't the Simpsons look clairvoyant? Because they knew this was going to happen. So in closing, the "as to my demise" again is fussy. In closing, evidence to prove he is the Zodiac. Again, the psychology behind that just says, if you aren't the Zodiac, why would you give them evidence they could exclude you with?
And I think all along he's got this guilty conscience to where eventually he does want to confess, kind of.
Well, I think he's more wanting, his ego wants the recognition for what he's done, and he wants the story to be told correctly. He's tired of all of these misconceptions and mysteries and baloney that they're talking about, and he's the one that can provide it. And I believe he probably did provide it, and we will never see that. That second page has something that Tom Voigt doesn't want the rest of us to see.
And Tom Voigt, who controls him? So. And maybe someone has told him, don't let anyone see that.
Well, that has to be the case. He didn't just arbitrarily on his own, I'm sure, decide not to show that.
He's in deep, and he's got protectors and controllers.
Just like our president. So reference to his conscience. There was a few other of the Zodiac letters that express this. It indicates perpetrated, who's hallucinating I was the Zodiac, claims of using the LSD, heroin, heavy drinking in a psychotic state. The underground society reference is really important to me because we see underground mentioned a lot in the Zodiac communications all the way through the finale letter with Tim Miller.
Right.
In these drug states, he believed he was observing, not the perpetrator. That's that, I think, possible hypnosis state that Dennis would say that Jack could put himself in. I've showed everybody a million times his little symbol for hypnosis that he would use, and there was a direction that said, I don't want to know. So stop trying to dive into your brain or your memory for this information because you don't want to know this. Almost as if he's capable of compartmentalizing these items based on triggering words and so forth. They, as well as I, again, is a fussy statement. I remained in my own eyes and those of my peers to be clairvoyant. So here again, he's putting himself before the peers, which is that fussy I and the police reference that the Zodiac uses, which the linguistics professor from UC Davis indicated that less than 2% of the population would likely form a sentence in that way. Most other people will put the others first and themselves last. And that's the way we're taught to do it. So for you to collectively decide you're going to put yourself first in any situation is not only showing the narcissism in you, but as well, that's something you consciously do when it's not proper grammar. Okay. Envelope and fingerprints, Tom Voigt's address. We've got the airmail sticker. So that's the attempt to disguise the state of residence. As in the LA Times letter, which the Zodiac also wrote on it airmail, again, making it appear as though he's not anywhere close by. Confidential, contains unmarked evidence, handle with care. So he took an extra precaution to actually mark the envelope with the fact that there's evidence in here, please don't destroy. And fingerprints, oriental packaging, and known to carry banned chemicals. And so that brings us to our second letter. So here, and I'm not sure why so far apart, unless obviously Dennis is still having issues with Tom, or there's communications going on that we've not seen. You know, why wait a year to respond? But I find this one even more interesting because he does redact things. He entirely redact. Why? Why are you redacting this information? Once again, where's the transparency? Yeah. So this is...
At first glance, it looks total Zodiac, and even like the slant and things like that. But yeah, the writing looks Zodiac.
We can see the circle period dots, which is under the exclamation under here. And of course, circular period dots is something we definitely noted in Zodiac writing. This one, it says on Tom's website, I received this anonymous letter January 15th, 2003. Why are you calling it anonymous? He gave you DNA and fingerprints. So what happened with that? What's the information behind? What did you do with that? Who received it? Did anybody investigate it? What's that?
What's he concealing?
Exactly.
What's he hiding?
So this one says, Dear Tom, what irony, what twisted spiraling fate that our paths should cross at this particular time in light of who you are and what I am. It's oh so amazing how fiction imitates life. In writing you first the letter, then of course it says you, redacted, and something. I wasn't interested in your website. Fact is, until I decided to write, I never entered it nor knew of its existence. And so this is where I say Dennis is telling Jack about Tom Voigt and his website and who he is in the state of this case.
Okay.
I never entered nor knew of its existence. I was honestly not aware of the screenplay being written about the website, a 20-something-year-old copycat me, and last but not least, yours truly. In our first communication, simply wanted to appease my conscience. Now, thanks to the miracle of technology, here we are in communication for a second time. I appreciate your giving me the information I was looking for. So that proves that Tom Voigt has at least responded in some way, some fashion, either on his website
Right.
or through a communication, because he's saying that he
He got the message.
appreciates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoops. So we have that first statement, which is a poetic style reference that Zodiac was known for. And then Jack knows a movie is in the making by the second statement. And of course, that's where we start to see him talk about wanting to give his story. But it says he is calling the suspect of the film a copycat ham next in the next line. And he reiterates his first letter sent in the following statement. This is his second to Tom. Evidently, Tom Voigt appeased Jack with some piece of knowledge. I'm way ahead of myself. I forgot I had fly-ins on these things. There are areas of these letters that are redacted, like the Scorpion letters to John Walsh. And what do these people not want the public to know? I'm just going to state it because it's worth saying again. The letter goes on to say, congratulations on your part for the upcoming movie script. It sounds like fun, but truth will not be served in its current format and ending. Reality is, Tom, neither you nor anyone else can write as appropriate an ending for the screenplay as myself. The last thing the public needs is another fictitious tale. I think that's what I've been screaming, right? For 4 years now, doing this podcast. The last thing we need is more fake suspects, more fake stories, more things to muddy up the waters. It says, if you want a news-breaking ending along with a realistic storyline between me and the Zodiac wannabe, you need my input. Knowing now as you do regards the matches of DNA and points, that I am the real deal, that I have changed so it is possible for others to change as well. You need me to help make this box office blockbuster it can be. So again, for knowing now as you do regards to the matches of DNA and points, which is fingerprints, where does he get this notion that Tom Voigt knows this if Tom Voigt hasn't expressed you are a match? I believe you. He goes on to say, imagine the publicity, Tom, the movie that drew the Zodiac out of hiding. This film has the potential to make your efforts and the efforts of all parties involved in this project profitable, in all capital letters, profitable. So again, we're seeing that desire for recognition. It compels him to say that his story would be better. That reminds me of the Sherry Jo Bates Citizen letter where they say, wouldn't the story be more interesting to learn about a blueprint designed killer, a boy basically, who was built into a killer. And of course, trying to get the recognition, wanting the truth to be told that it's him without really saying it's him, obviously. Got it. And calling Tom by his name is just like calling Tim by his name in the finale letter. So some of these habits are showing through between these letters. Second half of this letter is, here's my humble offer. Now, this really stands out to me because the next letter we're going to see, everyone, is the letter to Tim Miller. I call it the finale letter, where he's literally intimated all the different crime sprees that he is likely to have been a part of. And he labels the return address as Tom Humble. So we've got the word humble in this letter to Tom, and then we've got the return address being Tom Humble on the finale letter to Tim Miller. So it says, here's my humble offer. With my being who I am in relation to how I've been and what now I am, I want to help fuel this project to the max. Take your script to the biggest name studios in Hollywood. Tell them what you know about me, that you can provide proof that you and I are in contact and that I am willing to offer the meat and potatoes of and the story's ending for a mere US 10 million. The money will be deposited upfront into a numbered bank account of my choosing, with the only stipulation being that a trust, an organization or foundation be established with my rightful residuals to provide cash flow and closure for the families involved as a result of my deeds past.
Wow.
Right?
So he's talking about the families of his victims?
Yeah. Yeah, he's basically wanting to put this money aside and the royalties to go into some type of a foundation to provide for these families.
Wow. How noble.
When it comes, right? All of a sudden, he said he changed.
Yeah.
It says, when it comes right down to it, Tom, and then it's redacted, I have changed, and it is possible for others to change also. You need me to make this movie in the cost-effective, truer than life mega hit it can be. Let me know, Tom, via your wonderful website. So they're communicating. He says, also, you now know who I am.
I don't know if Tom is writing him directly, but he's addressing certain things on his website, and Zodiac is hip to the website.
Right. And it says yours truly, as we've seen so many things like the Dear Draft Board letters, signed yours truly or signed truly. Like again, this is reminiscent of Zodiac communications.
Why would he redact the bottom?
Exactly. And it says P.S.
That's postscript. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It says P.S. ... And we get nothing because the whole thing has been redacted.
I wonder if it's a Zodiac symbol or something.
Right.
Because usually
who knows? That's a large redaction. It looks to me like he's saying something there that why doesn't Tom want us to see that?
That's bullshit.
What is so protective about that information that it causes you to redact it?
That's bull.
So 2 more references to Tom's name, which accounts for a total of 3 times in this communication alone, which is identical to the amount of times that Jack wrote John in the John Benet Ramsey note. So we've got so he's calling people by their first names as if he has personal, relations with them. And yes, more redacted areas. Here again is another airmail. We've discussed this one is the one that's coming from Thailand. And of course, it's coming back here to the US. So it's likely that it was mailed over in a different packaging to whomever it was that was supposed to take and literally stamp and mail this back to here.
That does not look like Zodiac handwriting to me.
It's the same handwriting that's on these letters that, again, Charles identified as being his dad's handwriting.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks a little different on the envelope anyway.
Well, when I did cross comparisons to a lot of the stuff, there were many similarities to the handwriting.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
The first glance.
And again, we see the 4-digit extension of the zip code again, as seen in the anthrax and in the Black Dahlia letters, and on and on and on, like over and over again.
Actually has airmail written 3 different times in red felt pen.
He wanted to make sure they understood. This is if you say it 3 times, then it makes it true, right?
Yeah.
Say it enough, you won't forget it.
Wow.
So when I was under the impression, obviously with doing some research and work on Tim Miller's case, oil kept being brought up as in regards to super fudge, because that's what they call the thick, sludgy stuff that they then turn into gas. And so I started to look to see what we had going on. There was actually a Humble Oil and Refining Company in Houston, Texas. Here's one of the documentations on it. And it is going to the Chief Materials Branch Directorate of Licensing, U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, Washington, D.C. So I just thought that was a little piece of history there. This is date stamped December 26th of 1972. So we know that they were still actively open at that time, obviously. So some of the caveats to this letter is that it is to Tom Voigt on page 1. He uses hyphenation just as the Zodiac did. The twisted spiraling fate, again, is quite like the Titwillow, back to that whole poetic style of writing that we see in some of the communications, like the little list and things like that. Fiction imitates life, talks about the movie that's coming out. He incorrectly spells existence, and he's calling it a copycat me because he believes whoever they're going to have play him is not going to do it correctly. And our first communication simply wanted to appease my conscience. Again, I first I. I don't know why I wrote that. Anyways. Talks about the movie being false unless he writes the ending for them. Between me and the Zodiac wannabe, you need my input. What happened to this DNA? We've just asked that. Claims to have changed and could help make this a blockbuster. Misspells potential. The letter to Tom Voigt, page 2. Again, we've got redaction, we've got hyphenation usage, we've got humble. Same as that. Z80 L10 must be a similar construction of either wording or word. Request for exchange of story for money and trust for families he injured. Says he is needed to make this story truer than life, and a mega hit. So this is the persona I would have expected out of Arthur Lee Allen when he died. If he was truly the Zodiac, he would have been, it's me, I did it, here's the information. And now we've got somebody willing to give it up, or at least, attempting to. We've got the redaction. The envelope, of course, again, is mailed just as I stated. And the back of the envelope, airmail, attempt to make it look like it was from another state again. So that is consistent with Tom Voigt's and the LA Times. Now, the facts that surround these letters, I did kind of a small summary here. It says they were mailed from Thailand and Malaysia to make it look like Zodiac was not in the U.S. I posed the question to myself, how did Jack pull this off? Answer, I believe, is in the next details, which obviously is that John Mark Carr stuff. There were four murders in Sonoma County that the sheriff's department is sure was the work of the Zodiac. John Mark Carr was in jail awaiting a trial in Sonoma County for child porn charges because they found pictures on his computer at his place of work, which is a university, no less. After nearly 10 months in jail, 2 months before trial, Carr is released on his own recognizance. Why? Anyways, he skips town and runs to Thailand. And I believe that it supports he went to Malaysia first. And that's where we see the last anthrax letter, aside from this one coming in with a package of some toxic chemical. Carr starts emailing a professor at a university back here in the U.S., taking credit for the Zodiac and John Benet Ramsey's murders. This coincides with the letters to Tom Voigt coming from Thailand and Malaysia. Days before Jack's death, Carr walks into a Thailand police department and turns himself in for the murder of John Benet Ramsey. Now, this is the information I had in 2010 to 2013. But they've subsequently put stuff out stating that they actually busted him and I think picked him up at his place of work. So I do have that. Or is it busted per today's internet search? He receives a free ride home via Homeland Security. And in the pictures I saw, he's got like what looks to be a glass of champagne or something in his hand. They're laughing, they're drinking, they're having a great time. He doesn't appear to be in handcuffs. And for a supposed proclaimed child killer, and it said in one of the articles that the trip home cost more than $100,000. Why? Why wouldn't we just throw him in economy class? Why do we send out one of our presidential jets, and Homeland Security to get him? When Carr reaches Colorado, law enforcement believes that he knows things about the crime that only the killer could know, but his DNA, fingerprints, and handwriting are no match. So he is released and extradited to Sonoma County to face the child porn charges. Sonoma County takes Carr in, but he is eventually released because they've lost the computer of Carr that had been in evidence for only 5 years. This is insane. Why is anything having to do with these cases constantly coming up missing? I assure you, if they had evidence on me, they're not losing it. I'm going to jail.
Well, you know, good lawyer.
I believe there's a strong connection between these pedophiles and criminals, evidently. So more along the lines of what Harriet was talking about, Harry B was talking about, what Lindsay talks about, the area I never really wanted to kind of touch grounds on because I was in disbelief that it had any connection whatsoever to the Zodiac Killer. But I'm finding that I cannot bifurcate that. I cannot separate one instance from the next because it does seem to revolve around some element of it. Jack takes over
part of the bigger picture, I think, of some of the corrupt figures at higher levels that happen to be sex criminals.
I've always believed, and I think that Tim Miller had relayed to Dennis, we'll talk about that when we get to his letter, that he was involved in stuff during the time his daughter was taken from him, and that the Ramseys also understood exactly why their daughter was taken from them. So there was always this element, and I think this is why the major consensus believed that there was a possibility the Ramseys were guilty for having killed their child because they weren't being forthright about something. I feel like that they were holding something back. They were very evasive. I get why you would want to be, because until you're proven guilty, right, you don't have to defend yourself.
Right. And also maybe they didn't do it, or maybe the son didn't do it, but they knew more than they were letting on.
I think so. Well, that's pretty much all we have for today. We're down to our last final seconds here. I want to thank everybody again for being with us, and have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you next Friday. Thank you, Nolan.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Oh,